Jake the Film Guy, Microbudgeter.com, and in this video, we're going to talk about the mistakes you're making when you follow up.
Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring.
Numero uno, not following up with people. I once had a gentleman that said he needed a wedding video. I said, here you go, give me a call. Well, guess what? I didn't land that deal. I certainly didn't close him because I never followed up with him. Which leads us to the second mistake, and that is not doing the follow-ups frequently enough. Grant Cardone says 80% of sales take place between the 5th and the 12th point of contact. In other words, we need to be frequent. Once had a gentleman, a well-to-do gentleman, that is affluent in several different communities who needed to do an informational video. I said, great, let's do it. I only followed up with him 2 times, maybe a 3rd time. Nonetheless, it wasn't frequent enough. I fell off his radar. He's a busy man. I didn't persistently ask like my son might ask me when he wants some chips. Daddy, may I please have some chips? Daddy, may I please have some chips? Sometimes he'll ask 5 to 12 times, and you know what? He's pretty good at closing me. Why don't we have faith like a child? Why don't we have persistence like a child? Be frequent. Which leads us to number 3. You can't just keep using the same approach, the same swing when you're trying to nail that board together. You know what I mean? I once had a lady I was trying to recruit to help with our Sunday services, and I kept asking the same question every single time I reached out to her. Hey, what do you think about joining the team? Rookie, noob, mistake. Don't do that. Be creative. On a positive note, there was a gentleman, Canadian, who I once got to do a gig with, or for, courtesy of the PGA Tour that was coming through Vegas. Now, this gentleman, being a Canadian, had all of the upper hand on me. If he wanted to really hose me, he could have. I couldn't have gone to the BBB. I couldn't have gone to the Secretary of State. I couldn't have filed something in the county that I was in because he was a Canadian. He just went back over the border when it was all said and done. But I followed up with him. I had the only thing in my arsenal at that point to get a hold of him, and that was to be creative, to get his attention. After follow-up after follow-up, I finally pulled out something wacky out of the arsenal. It's one of my favorites. I love to say, hey, I would loaf to ... And in this case, it was to get paid. I sent him a picture of a loaf of bread. I would loaf to get paid. And after ghosting me for 2 months, this was well past the net 30, well past the net 60 point, he finally responded, laughed in his text message, dropped an expletive, and paid me seconds later on PayPal. So be creative with your follow-ups. Tip number 4, you want to make sure that you're actually varying up the different mediums. Some people don't like text messaging. Some people don't like the phone. Some people will only respond to you if you shoot them a message on Facebook Messenger. We all like that dopamine hit of a notification. Figure out how people prefer to communicate. No different than with our parenting, right? We can't parent 2 kids the exact same way. Well, in our follow-ups with people, we need to make sure that we are using multiple channels. There was a gentleman that I was trying to get a hold of, trying to get powers and principalities in front of. He wouldn't respond to the cold calls. He wouldn't respond to the voicemails that I left him. This gentleman has credits under his belt. He's been in the industry for decades. He is a well-to-do producer. He's worked on shows like House of Cards. And I thought, well, let me just try to get my story in front of him. Well, I was naive about it, but persistent, and I figured out, okay, phone wasn't working, so what do I got to do now? Well, that's when I tried emailing him. And he responded. We actually had several emails go back and forth. Now, Powers and Principalities is not a TV show that's actually living and breathing at this point in time, but nonetheless, I actually got conversations going with this man who is influential because he preferred email. So figure out what your client, your unsold, the person that's going to join your team, the person that's already on your team prefers, and use that method of communication. You want to figure out the essential information. Phone number, and I mean cell phone number. So this is a mistake people make, not getting all that information that they can when they follow up people. Birthdays, anniversaries, the whole gamut. If the person has a bar mitzvah coming up, figure out when that bar mitzvah is. These are reasons for you to follow up with people and celebrate these moments with them. I have a person on my team, and their anniversary was coming up. I asked my buddy to help me sign the card, sent the card. Find out later that this person's spouse completely forgot about the anniversary. Now, I don't know that what we did was a small or a big gesture. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is we might have been one of the only people to recognize that it was that person's anniversary. We do care about that person. That person's already on the team. That person's helping out. Team player. Show that you care about your people. Don't just try to get them to sign the dotted line. Continue to develop the relationships. After all, if you're a follower of Jesus, we're called to disciple. Not just say, one and done, go in peace, and make waves. No, we actually want to continue to cultivate relationships. Figuring out somebody's anniversary, their birthday, excellent way to follow up, so don't make the mistake of not getting that information. Which leads us to number 6. You want to make sure that you're actually sharing personal anecdotes every now and again. That person on the other end might have a wealth of wisdom. If they're a parent and you are a young parent, maybe they have something that they can share with you. That's what I was doing with one of my volunteers. Couldn't get a response. Finally shared a personal anecdote and asked for their advice about a parenting situation. They fired back with a story of their own. People love to give counsel, and after all, we're told in Proverbs, plans fail for a lack of counsel. So make use of that person's wisdom, which then starts with you sharing personal anecdotes and asking for counsel. It may have nothing to do with what you're following up with about, but nonetheless, it can get conversations going. And hopefully you're being genuine. You do want to learn from this person's wealth of wisdom. Make use of that. Which leads us to our 7th and final point, and that is the mistake that you're also making that you need to be avoiding is, well, I forgot what it is. Let's look it up. Assuming that the relationship is dead. Don't ever assume that. Just because a person moves to Timbuktu doesn't mean the relationship is dead. Stay in touch with them. You never know when they might need your help or when you might need their help. I had a gentleman that was moving to Florida. When he was moving, I said, hey, do you happen to have X, Y, and Z since you're moving and you might have to get rid of it anyways? And he said, no, but hold on. I know somebody. Made a few phone calls for me. Turns out it didn't all work out. But nonetheless, he was willing to go to bat for me on top of his move that he had going on across a time zone to a whole different state, different part of the country. He did that. What a good guy. Nevertheless, you need to follow up. Even if nothing happens, you need to follow up people even once they've moved out of your local area and out of your life. You never know when you might be able to serve them again or vice versa. Relationships aren't dead just because somebody moves to a different town. Keep that in mind. Now, I hope you will be genuine and authentic with your follow-ups with people. This is not to be manipulative. This is so that you can continue to build relationships, whether you're trying to sell somebody on your video production service, get money for your film, or continue to build into your team, expand your team, whatever the case may be. Follow-up is so important. I have other resources at the site that you can check out for creative follow-ups. Let me know who it is you need to follow up with and what strategy you will use to follow up with them in the comments below. I wish you well. Keep creating with the King of Kings. God loves you absolutely so very much. I'll see you on the next video.